Okay, you're all set.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town Board work session for Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. So before we get started with tonight's agenda, you may notice that all of the Town Board members are wearing orange this evening. And the reason that we are wearing orange is that this weekend kickstarts National Gun Violence Awareness Weekend. With this Friday, June 4th, being National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And as we've done in years past, we are commemorating this by wearing orange at tonight's town board meeting. And we will also be passing a resolution to declare that Friday, June 4th is National Gun Violence Awareness Day here in Newcastle. So you'll be hearing more about that this evening, but I wanted to explain why we're wearing our wear orange shirts. The first thing that we're going to do on tonight's agenda is actually wasn't on the public agenda, but we wanted to add a piece where we are going to discuss the new leaf blower legislation, which went into effect today, June 1st. It is now leaf blower season, and so gas leaf blowers are not allowed in the town of Newcastle beginning today, June 1st, and throughout the summer months. So we're going to hear a little bit from Chief Carroll about the enforcement of our new local law regarding leaf blowers. And we also have our friends from the Sustainability Advisory Board who are with us this evening and can talk to us a little bit about the impact of the local law as well. So Chief, can we start with you?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. As Ivy said, I'm here to address some questions or just to lay forth a plan for our enforcement of the new town code. Started weeks ago, we sent an email to the patrol and all officers advising them of the code and what they would be dealing with in the future. We followed that up with every day this month as a daily reminder as to the new law and specifics about it. This morning, I sent out an IXL to the community, and I know it was also shared by a couple of Facebook posts. With an overview of the law and some frequently asked questions, and I want to thank the SAB for providing that. I won't take credit for all that work. That was their work, and I just I used it to share the message. But our plan for enforcement is like most town code violations. Either patrol can observe the violation, or a resident will call on it. The first step we would do is issue a warning, provide education, and document the names of the individuals in our record management system. Any subsequent calls or any other calls we go in the same situation, we have the ability to check our record management system to see if we had dealt with the person in the past. And if we had, then a summons would be issued. So the idea before is warning, education, voluntary compliance. If that doesn't happen, then it would be a violation issue. And really, that's the overview. Any questions?
No, so the end game is just not, we're not looking to catch people up, and it's not our goal to just penalize people. It's more to give them the opportunity to understand and educate, and then take enforcement further should it be necessary.
Right. Yes, and officers will have a copy of the NIXL that I sent out today, and they'll have that as the ability to pass out to residents to also help with the education part. I know that there's been many messages, and hopefully our residents do share the law with their landscapers. And I think that will go a long way, and I think they will. And that's how we're going to be successful. So, and it's going to take, a little time. There'll be some growing pains, and there'll be some pushback, but in the end, they'll get the message.
Well, I called actually texted my landscaper today to just remind him that the local law had gone into effect, and that I expected that there would be no gas-operated leaf blowers on my property, and sort of reminded him that for the entire town, not just me. So it would be great maybe if people could just remind their landscapers. Nothing, since we're the ones that pay the bills, they sort of listen to us more than they will other people. And I think if there's a clear message out there that this is what we'd like, and we understand that, the place may not look as pristine, or if they're using electric, it'll look as pristine, but that's fine. So I think the message will come through loud and clear, but I think they need the support of the community explaining that this is something they'll agree to, and we'd like to go forward.
And, our community is never shy in reporting violations. So I expect a fair amount of them in the beginning.
And
If I-
Chief, do you know, this is Kathy Schreiber from the Sustainability Advisory Board. Is there an idea that this warning, education, voluntary compliance, sticking with warning and education, is there a time frame expected for that?
Yeah, I did see some of the information you provided today. Thank you. That was very helpful. I'd like to give it a month or two to see how it goes, and then we can change our course. Maybe the end of July. If it's not working that way, then we can look at it again.
Great. And I would like to make a comment that we did, Rand Manasseh, who was spearheading this effort, and I did speak at length with the Scarsdale representative, their kind of equivalent representative. And I think we all could agree that the folks in Scarsdale are equally as concerned with their properties, and there really isn't a concern about how how the yards look. And I mean, the reality is, if you have someone coming once a week, there's drop from petals of flowers and other things that happen all week long, right? So I think, but I will say that the feedback from Scarsdale, who has a ban that was recently pushed back to May, it was June 1st, just like the Newcastle ban, and the residents have been thrilled with the quiet. And there have been just thankful letters to town about passing this law, and there's been no complaints about something looking messy or poorly on the properties.
And the other thing, Chief, is that the two things, I think. One of them is, if you want, we have flyers that we sent out with the mailer that you can also use to hand out instead of the Nixle announcement, and we can supply that to the town easily. But the other thing is we spoke with both Bedford and Scarsdale, and really it was a tale of two cities, if I may. And in Scarsdale, they're having very good compliance. They went through pretty much what you're doing, Chief, and that is they went through a period of I think it was a month or two where they just did warnings, and then they went to ordinance, handing out fines for non-compliance, and they found by doing that they did get compliance. In Bedford, they just went through warnings, and they really have had very little compliance. So they found that a program, starting out with warnings for a while and then starting to do fines, and they're ranging about 70 fines a year in Scarsdale, and their fines are at the same rate that ours are, has really helped them control it. And they've been going now for, what did they say, Kathy, for how long?
They have had a gas leaf blower restriction since 1994, which is really incredible. And this new law, which was passed earlier this year, where they have went from June 1st start date to March 1st start date. And then next year, starting January 1st, no gas leaf blowers January 1st through September 30th. And then after that, then only Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday through Friday, and no weekends and no holidays. So much more restrictive, and that it seems to have had a lot of positive feedback. And I know you guys have a copy of that flyer that was created for the town mailer that went out with the water district quality water report. If we were wondering if it would be helpful to have like a tag for a door tag or something like that, we could design that and build upon some ideas from the other towns. Or if you think the 8.5 by 11 sheet, which is two-sided and then it has multiple languages on the reverse in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Hindi, if you think that works. I just don't know I know you can't put stuff in the mailboxes, but something maybe hanging on a door might be easier.
Rand, if you would drop those pamphlets or flyers off at the police desk, I can leave some there for the community, and also I can put them in our cars and have the officers hand them out. That'd be great.
Sure.
Do we have any extras, Rand? I know the town, we can run off some. The town had run off as part of the water bill. Do we need to run off more?
I don't have,
Christina, do you have extra?
We do have extra. I don't know. I mean, we don't have thousands, but we could give what we have. And then if we need more, get more, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Great,
We picked them up today. So
wonderful. And Christina, I
I
do
sort of
have,
like the,
sorry, Jill, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I really like the door hangers. I noticed that. Is that Scarsdale or what community used them? I thought they were great.
Scarsdale did, yes.
Yeah.
But sure, we can design something like that and send it to your approval. I had just done a quick budget check and they're not terribly expensive if you use sort of an online printer, although it'd be lovely to use a local supplier. So we can price those out and work with you. And then obviously, Chief, we'd like you to approve the content as well, since your folks will be handing it out.
yeah, that's the Scarsdale one.
Perfect. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. And the other item is they did both an info card about the law, and then they did some educational about leaf blowers and healthy yards.
Okay.
We try to cram as much as we can on that little door hanger, but we will design something like that.
So I'm sorry, is somebody going to go around to every single house and put that on their door?
There already has been a complete mailing to every single resident in town with the annual, let me get the exact words, the 2020 annual drinking water quality report. This would just be for compliance. If somebody has not, it'd be a nice thing to say, hey, there was a report, especially if a homeowner or a resident or renter is not home. There was a report of a violation on your property. Please be aware about the law, blah, blah, blah. So it's more of a follow-up in terms of the violation, not for further education. That would be sort of the intent of that. Good question.
The other thing we found out from both Scarsdale and Bedford was that they weren't all just using offices to do the compliance. They were reaching out to other compliance offices, or they were deputizing other compliance offices within town. They were using building inspectors or people within the building department to go about town and pass out some of those door hangers or flyers to residents. And they were looking for landscapers that were violating and handing out flyers at that point during the warning period or during the violation period.
Historically, the code noise ordinance violations have been a responsibility of the police department. And that restarted because most of the complaints are on weekends when there's nobody from code enforcement working. So I think we'll start out with us as being the enforcement agency. And if we are overwhelmed, then we can certainly during the week ask for help from code enforcement. And I am confident in our model for, for success of this. We just did it. I got a new law passed for the mass law, and the same thing. Education, warning, documentation, and enforcement. It was very successful very quickly. So.
Okay, just wanted to pass that along. I thought it was an interesting, a novel approach used.
Thank you, Chief Carroll, for that. It's very encouraging. And I will say that one of the other things that the Bedford representative had said is that there's 100% compliance in her neighborhood because she's running out there every time she sees somebody and handing them a flyer. And I know that's not everybody's thing to want to do, certainly not mine. But for me, I did ask my own landscapers many, many years ago to please not use the leaf blowers, not only for the pollution, but also for the impact to my gardens and the wildlife. And, I wasn't typically home. I was in the city, working in the city. Now everybody's home. So I had to leave notes on I have a gate, and I had to leave notes on my gate with like my own makeshift sign, because they forget. They're not sophisticated. They don't have like a manual. It says, okay, customer A wants this, customer B wants this. It's sort of, for the most part, they were saying it's the guy in the truck. And my personal landscaping company is a little bit in between. He's a smaller owner, but not like a guy with a truck. And then the concern about the most compliance issues that there was concern about was with the larger companies because that they might go ahead and absorb the fine rather than comply. And that was more so in Bedford, is their concern was that. So I really have a lot of high hopes that we will have not too many compliance issues in Chappaqua and Millwood and the rest of Newcastle. But I will say that if everybody's kind and patient and pass out the note, it's just a matter of people just still need to learn. You can shout it from the rooftops for months and people will still say, I never heard it. So it's just a matter of they'll hear it when they hear it.
So I think you guys should come to the farmer's market too and have a little booth there for the next couple weekends and hand out flyers and educate people as well.
Yeah, we do have a schedule of the farmer's market. I'm not sure if we're on there, but I'll follow up with the guys scheduling that and see if we're there this weekend. And then of course, but we have been passing out things at the farmer's market.
Great. Well, we're really excited and I'm grateful to you all for making time and to you, Chief Carroll, as well for making time this evening to join us to discuss this. I couldn't agree with you more, Kathy, that I think that sort of a measured approach and sort of kindness and patience as we roll this out are going to be needed from people on all sides, as we adapt to something new. But I think it's really worthwhile and I think it's exciting. And I think we're going to appreciate the calm quiet, and we're going to appreciate the lasting climate change impact that we're going to have through this legislation as well. So I'm really grateful to everybody for their hard work in getting us to in some respects feels like the finish line, and at the same time also feels like the starting gun. So it's great.
Exactly. It's been in many years, and I appreciate all the board that their hard work and their detailed review of everything we've looked at. And I will say in the time that we have passed our law, several other Westchester towns and villages and cities have also enacted their laws. So we are definitely on the correct trend of this issue. And I know there will be some bumps and some concerns. And we are working on FAQs that we will route to the town board for official review as well. And then we're going to update it based on some information that we've received here tonight from our discussion. So I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Great.
Kathy, just one thing in the FAQs, don't call gardeners unsophisticated.
Did I call gardeners unsophisticated?
Yeah, so I just don't want to offend anybody. So just make sure you don't put that in the FAQ.
Did I say it in my words a few minutes ago or in writing in somewhere?
Yeah, no, now. So I just want to make sure.
Sure. I probably meant, a formal garden. No.
I think you meant I think what you said, and I understand the concern, but it was that they weren't sophisticated in their, each house has a different recommendation or desire, not that they were.
I'm saying in this, not
the
sophisticated, I'm
process
saying
is-
correct, sophisticated in their processes of how they, having like a notebook of what everybody is, their preferences and things like that. But no, I definitely would not accuse anybody of not being sophisticated.
Thank you, Rand and Kathy, for all your hard work on this.
And thank you, everyone. I mean, we
Thank
really
you guys.
is in a lot of ways when we approached this about 5 years ago. And I think now we're in the middle of the trend that's going on throughout the county. And I do thank everyone for their persistence in getting this here.
Thanks, Rand.
Have a great night.
Great.
Thank you all. We're excited to help get this done more. Okay.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Thank
Thanks.
you all.
Thank
Bye,
you.
all.
Chief.
Bye, Chief.
Okay, so I think the next thing that we have on the agenda for tonight's work session is a presentation from our fabulous controller, Rob Deary.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to present as usual. I'm giving it's a little more than first quarter. I actually got through the first third of the year. It's through April. And I think we have better news than we had been expecting for quite a while, as it looks like we're coming through the pandemic in pretty good shape. start out first by saying the town finances continue to remain strong as they have over the last several years. Our cash flow is currently in very good shape. Our town and county tax collections were 98.21% as of last week. Typically, we get another late rush of payments in at the end of May. So I would imagine that'll be over 99% in the next day or two once we process those payments, which is right on par for normal collections. We're typically over 99% through the first year of collections. So we're right on par there. Just start out by saying the first quarter analysis usually pretty difficult to predict. A lot of expenses haven't come in yet. Even the bills that have come in, there's typically a lag in payment, so they haven't hit the system yet. So what I kind of do to make sure we're where we should be through the year is I just take a look through all the expenses and look at the categories and see if there's anything that is greater than 33%, and that would just kind of be a red flag to dig a little bit deeper. So I'll start first by talking about the revenues, and we are in pretty good shape for that. I'll start with the general fund and a couple of the variable sources of revenue, and we have some good early indications. Sales tax, we got our first of 4 installments. That was a little over 1.1 million. Very good for coming right out of the pandemic. That would be the first quarter of the year. So at 1.1 million, that's so far 34% of the overall budget for the year, 3.3 million. So if the rest of the year remains strong, and I have no reason to believe that it won't, I think as businesses continue to open up in the second quarter, people start traveling and spending money, I think we're probably going to see sales tax remain pretty strong. Next topic, I'll skip over to mortgage tax real quick. We haven't received the first installment. That's due probably in the first week or 2 of June, but the tax assessor gives me the sales numbers, and we have an overall annual budget of $925,000. Looks like our first installment is going to be $883,000. That's about almost 90% of our total annual budget, and that doesn't even take into account that the December payment will include all of the summer months, which typically have a higher volume of sales. So mortgage tax looks pretty solid.
Well, can I just interrupt you for a moment while you're taking a sip of your drink?
Sure.
When you give us numbers like this, and we can look at the sales tax revenue that's come in, we can look at the mortgage tax revenue that's come in. I mean, in both of those categories, there's a possibility that the town could exceed the revenue projections by as much as $1 million if the trends continue the way they have today. So what do we, if that, fortunate scenario occurs, what do we do with those additional revenues?
Well, essentially that would become fund balance. But if you remember at the beginning of the budget process last year, and in order to kind of keep a flat tax levy for the general and highway funds, we allocated $700,000 more of fund balance than we were anticipating. So to say, kind of in my mind, the first 700,000 would be to replenish that, as opposed to actually using it to balance this budget. We would use the revenue to offset the expenditures that we set. So
I kind of thought you were going to say that when I asked the question.
Yeah, but that's a good problem to have. And if you remember when we had that discussion about allocating more fund balance than we wanted to, that was the thought, was we were budgeting on the kind of pessimistic side. You didn't really know where the pandemic was going or how much longer we would be shut down for, but we were cautiously optimistic that if everything we hoped would happen, then we wouldn't need that fund balance. And it certainly looks like it's playing out that way. So I hope that's the case. Just go over a couple other revenue sources. Summer camp is one that we're probably not going to reach the budget this year. We, just like last summer, we were actually able to hold a camp in a limited fashion. And this summer we've actually expanded a little bit. But unfortunately, one of the higher revenue categories of camps, the on-the-go camp is one that we just weren't able to put on this year, between having bus rides and different events that may or may not be operating, different theme parks and baseball games, and what was the limited capacity and those types of things. So that reduces our revenue. Right now we're at about 250,000, which isn't bad. That's against 116,000 last year. But the kind of the offset there is, while the revenue is reduced, so are the expenditures. So we're not hiring as many counselors. We're not paying for these trips. We're not paying for bus travel. So it's not exactly a one-to-one, but we have a savings on the expense side too. Parking permits, that's one that we're kind of gonna not know until December. If you remember, we extended, typically we renewed this and the revenue would come in May and June. Last year, in a hope to kind of salvage something, we extended the parking permits. The renewals now are in December. So, you know, I think we're optimistic. We slashed that revenue projection down from 950,000 in the pre-pandemic years. We dropped that to 500,000. So I think, you know, we're optimistic that we'll see commuters come back, but we're also, I think, realistic in understanding that it probably won't be to the levels that it was before the pandemic.
Do we have any feeling for parking usage? You know, so we can see that our permits are down like 50%, right? But I might guess that the usage is down even further than that if people are buying their permits but only using them, you know, 2 days a week or something.
Sure, and Joe, maybe you can comment. I know, you know, when the lot was full, we did used to track that because, you know, we wanted to make sure we had parking for everyone. So we did do a count, kind of an open spaces count, but I'm not sure if we're actually tracking the number of cars. No.
No, we're at this point we're not. It would actually be easier to count the number of cars we have rather than the empty spaces. But you know, that's sort of a fluid thing, and I think that over the next year or so, people's habits are going to return to certainly more pre-pandemic situations. I hate to use this comparison, but take it for what it's worth. After 9/11, it took a while for parking to take and resume. We never quite hit that pre-9/11 parking levels, but we came awfully close. And I fully expect that another horrific, you know, incident like the pandemic is still going to take and pull our parking levels back, and it'll take a year or two for it to recover, and probably not quite at the same level, but close. And that actually would be a great thing for us not to have a overly packed parking lot, because it does give us a little bit of breathing room. We don't track the number of permits that we sell, so we basically oversell, understanding that not everybody goes in every single day. So it is awfully nice to make sure that, you know, people who do buy the parking permit do actually get a place to park, which is something that we haven't guaranteed in the past.
Yeah, I would guess come September, it's going to start getting a little busier. I think people,
I think you're right.
from what I've been hearing is people are starting to go back to the offices in September. But it's just another thing that's, you know, I think it's hard to tell the results after COVID. It's going to take a while for that all to trickle through.
I think there's a good possibility the number of employers, right, will keep a partial week offsite policy because their employees will want it.
Right.
And
Right.
certainly a number of employers have sold and reduced their real estate in the city. So it would be interesting for us to sort of know where we are in terms of usage, so that we might understand change over time.
I agree. I think, yeah, and I agree with Lisa. I think that probably we'll start seeing a lot of that in September, and that'll be a better gauge.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, if they keep construction on the Sawmill Parkway and everybody has to try to squeeze through that 2-lane thing through Pleasantville, people may think twice about driving into the city and maybe will consider taking the train again.
We've actually seen a little flurry now for the June 1st or June 15th start. So I don't know if it's because it's on their tickler, like that's when it used to start the new year, or if it's just because things are opening up, but we were glad to see that.
Could be. Okay, just to continue with some the other revenue sources for the general fund, building permits. We had a strong year last year through the pandemic, and this year is really even at a higher pace. Sabrina will tell you her office has been consistently busy from the beginning of the year. We budgeted building permits at 900,000 for the year. Our current revenue through April sits at about 428,000, which is close to about 50%. As compared to last year, we did about 270,000 through May. So, quite a bit increase from last year, and last year was a pretty good year. And as I mentioned to the board in the executive session, after I printed this report and sent it in for the packet, we had another $80,000 in building permits in a single day. So building permits definitely look to be another revenue source that looks on target. And the last one I'll cover is just tax penalties. I cover it because it's a pretty large revenue source, individual source. It's budgeted at 400,000. We're currently at about a third of that budget, 132,000. The largest portion of that comes during the summer when we do lien rollovers. So, judging by prior years, we'll be on pace for that. Last year, I think we were close to about $500,000 in tax penalties, and that's because we've been able to collect some of the kind of larger outstanding liens that have come in. We've got one real big one that we're hoping for. We thought it would be by now, but we haven't seen it yet. So that would really send that number through the moon if we get that payment in. As I mentioned, the expense is kind of difficult to predict, but in the general fund through the first 4 months of the year, just looking at the different expenditure categories, personnel, we're at about 33% of budget. So we're 33.01% of budget. So we're almost directly on budget for personnel costs. There's two different contractual groups of expenditures. One is at 14%, one is at about 12%. So well below the 1/3 of the year. And employee benefits are at about 28% right now. So all of those look to be in line on pace for the end of the year. Just shifting over to the highway fund, there's very few revenue sources in the highway fund, but the largest by far is the New York State appropriations for the CHIPS, paving reimbursement, Pave New York, and extreme winter recovery. We talked about this at the board meeting last week where the board accepted the additional amounts this year. We had budgeted this number at 225,000. We found out that our revenue for the year will be 445,000, which is a significant jump from what we were expecting. Typically, in years past, we have designated this specific revenue when this has been over budget to go back into our paving budget, and I anticipate doing the same again this year. On the expense side, really the only thing throughout our whole budget that came above the 33% threshold for the year were related to snow removal. And snow removal overtime currently is at 180,000. It's about 92% of budget. So we have about $18,000 remaining in the line, which basically covers the last 6 months of the year. The last 2 months, the last 2 weeks, sorry, in November and the last 4 weeks in December. That one is tough to tell. We may exceed that number, but we are pretty good with our salt purchases for the year. So if we do happen to go over a little bit in the snow removal overtime, we'll have a little bit of offset in the salt category. Just touching on a couple other categories in the highway fund, equipment purchases, 29% of budget, contractual expenditures, 12.57% of budget. That number is very low because we haven't done the road paving yet. That would be included in that group. The other contractual source, about 18%, and employee benefits and highway, about 26% of budget. So we're right on pace right now. And just to cover the other two major funds, the water and the refuse fund. For water, the revenue, we don't see very much of it in the beginning of the year, especially the way we bill. We're on a lag, usually a 1-month lag. So right now we're only billing water usage up through April. So typically May through September will be the largest billing months. So it's hard to know where the revenue will go. Last year we had a particularly dry summer and we recorded a lot of revenue. If we have a wet summer this year, probably less, but then a lot of the expenses that are associated with that revenue, the chemical costs and the cost of the raw water and the electricity, all those numbers would be reduced as well. And the refuse fund right now, very little revenue to speak of. Typically the recycling center selling the compost and mulch and processing the raw materials. That picks up in April and May, and we'll start to see the revenue come in the next few weeks. And as the last part of my financial discussion, I know some of the board members have asked, the town is due to receive, right now the estimate's about $1.95 million from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And I've been on some calls with colleagues. I've seen some seminars, some slideshows on what we can use these funds for. And right now they're giving kind of specific guidance, and really the two that apply to us would be either to offset lost revenue that we may have had due to the pandemic. And the other one that may apply to us is to make necessary investments in water, sewer, broadband infrastructure. And I'll tell you, really, the first category to respond to expenditures we spent for the public health emergency, we didn't have a ton of those, and we have already requested reimbursement through FEMA for most of that. So that's why I don't believe that that reimbursement category would apply to us. So just touching on the lost revenue as well. It's not as straightforward as we budgeted a certain amount in 2020 and the actual was far less. There's a complicated formula using 2019 as a baseline and then projecting it out for several years and then comparing your projections with actuals. And I'm not sure if we'll qualify to use that. I certainly will run the numbers, and if we can use it that way, fine. But there are some definites that you can't use it on. You can't use it on debt service, and you cannot use it to restore fund balance. So I think the idea is actually to put the money back into the economy and get people working. And that's where I think the fourth category, to make necessary investments in water and sewer infrastructure, those are kind of right up our alley right now. We have several large water projects that are looming on the horizon. So I think we'll be able to put the money to good use. So as far as my financial presentation, that's it. I'm going to talk in a minute about the board's goals and objectives for the year, but if anybody has any questions or comments regarding the finances right now.
I don't have any questions, but I will just raise a comment, which is to thank you once again for coming before the town board and doing these, quarterly updates for us. I have found them to be tremendously helpful in terms of keeping track of how we're doing, particularly during the pandemic, when there's been all of these fluctuations in terms of our revenues and expenses and unforeseen circumstances. And just really, once again, having you sort of at the helm has been deeply reassuring to me personally. And, I was actually reflecting earlier today with Jeremy. We were just sort of trading notes. And I said, I got my most recent tax bill and I opened it up, and I was really tremendously proud of the fact that the town of Newcastle taxes increased 0% for me over the tax bill last year. And it's a tremendous accomplishment, and it's due to your hard work and Jill's hard work and the sacrifices that town staff have made in order to deliver that for taxpayers in Newcastle. So thank you, Rob.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment.
I just have a question, Rob.
Sure.
The American Rescue Plan Act is,
Mhm.
what's the time period? Does it apply at the beginning of the pandemic, or is it like current? Just out of curiosity.
So I think, well, so I'll tell you, number one, we're due to get the money, I think, by July. So it's going to come in two different payments. 50%, I think, is due, and they're expecting it somewhere around, June or July. And then it's unclear when we'll get the second installment of that. And I think that we have about 4 years, from what I've heard right now, to spend it,
Okay.
or to document how we spent it. So again, I've been on phone calls with colleagues, and nobody's exactly clear. I haven't heard of, from the people that I've talked to, I'm not sure anybody has it totally spent right now. But I know there's a lot of ideas being formulated. So I think we do have a couple years to spend it. And like I said, I think some of those water projects we have, if we're able to use this money rather than dip into the water fund balance, or to have to borrow money to do that, I think that would be a tremendous help.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Rob, just a quick question, because I know you're always very fiscally responsible and conservative, which I like. My concern is part of the reason we did so well was because there was a mass exodus from the city during COVID, and we had a huge amount of home sales and then resulting people who wanted to do work on their homes. But that's going to stop at some point, especially if the mortgage rates start to go up. So I just want to make sure that we're being responsible so that we're not kind of spending everything we have that we've made, and make sure that we're kind of saving it for a rainy day, because I'm concerned that once those rates go up, and if companies start leaving the city because people don't want to be there, that we could end up kind of going the other way. And I'm just kind of thinking ahead. So I just want to make sure I'd rather, increase fund balance or give the money, back somehow to our taxpayers rather than spend too much of it, because I'm kind of cognizant that I'm worried that this is just a bubble that's going to pop pretty soon.
Sure, I would agree. And listening to any of the presentations I've made over the years, and I think everybody knows that I am very conservative as far as spending, or advising you how to spend the money. It's not my money to spend, but yeah, I would agree with that. But I don't think we have any real preconceived notions of spending this right now. I'm definitely a wait and see kind of person, but as I mentioned, mortgage tax right now is at about 90% of the budget for the year, and that number is through the way that payment works. It's home sales through March. I've already also seen the April numbers, and that number will push us above budget already. So I think one would expect sales to taper off at some point, but I don't think that's going to affect us this year. It may be something to look at in the future, but I think through the end of this year, that number will remain strong. And again, we haven't finished the year, so I would hesitate to spend money until we have a firm grasp on the end of the year.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, do we want to shift topics over to the town board's priorities for 2021?
Sure.
I'll share my screen now so everyone can see these topics. These were discussed earlier in the year. The town board prepared these, and I've kind of given a status update. Some of them I'm intimately familiar with, other ones I collaborated with the department heads or the current staff that were working on the projects to get an update. So Um, you know, the first one kind of speaks for itself as far as the form-based code. I think we all know where that is right now. We're looking at the change order for some of the additional studies that were beyond the initial scope. I think the current date, the change order is requiring the deliverables by is to July 8th. And I think public meetings will be scheduled after that, if I'm correct, Jill or Ivy, if you have any different update to that one. Okay. Down in the next category of improving our capital planning and our infrastructure, and I will mention a few things that are going on kind of outside of this list. The Millwood Sidewalk project has been delayed. Unfortunately, there were some changes in the required property takings by New York State DOT. Bob Cioli, the town engineer, he's continuing to work with DOT to kind of get those approvals, but we kind of move this forward. Unfortunately, it's stalled a little bit at the moment, and DOT has been difficult to get to move forward. The topic of roads and creating an inventory of our existing roads. Jill and I are kind of currently working with, and this is not just our roads, but our overall infrastructure. Jill and I are we surveyed the managers group, and I think Jill spoke with Barton and with Judas last week regarding this. And there are certain studies that we're going to look at that kind of make an assessment of all of our infrastructure and kind of help us to prioritize replacement of these things. And you know, this is something that we have talked about for a while, and unfortunately with Jerry retiring at the end of the year and Bart taking over at the beginning of this year, you know, Bart's done a phenomenal job, but he's been kind of short-staffed. He's had some changes down there. He's also had some retirements, people working underneath him. So, you know, we kind of are realizing it's just a very difficult project probably to complete in-house, and you know, we're looking for some consultants to help us with that. So that's kind of where we are right now with that project. The Minkle Dam, we've applied for, I think, 2 different grants for this project, and one of the grants, I think, will not reimburse us for any expenditures that occurred before the award of the grant. So right now we are actually delaying this project by about 6 months until we hear the results of this grant. We're ready to proceed with this, but we just we want to make sure we think we're in a pretty good position to receive some of these grants, and we don't want to move forward and incur any costs that won't be reimbursed at this point.
And as Rob notes, not only did we get a letter of no objection from the DEC, but Tectonic, who we actually awarded the grant to, is been terrific about working with us and helping us get the letter from the DEC. And they too have no problem with holding off until we get the grants. So it's been a terrific collaboration so far. And we're very hopeful about the grants. They're quite significant.
Yeah, that was
75 or 80%.
Yeah. Bob got that letter last week, so that was obviously we needed to make sure, and we have continued to monitor that dam. And I think it was about 2 years ago we actually increased the inspection and the monitoring of that dam just to make sure that we're still in good shape, and we are. The next category is in the category of creating a climate smart and resilient Newcastle. The first topic is talks about building on our track record of success in creating a green building code. I talked to Sabrina last week, and I'm understanding that Sabrina and Tom are currently reviewing the stretch code specifications, and they're looking to prepare a draft code. And Sabrina tells me they expect to implement that either at the end of the 3rd quarter or beginning of the 4th quarter. Whoops. Scroll too much. Yeah, I don't really have an update on this next one as far as exploring locations to install solar panels to create a new climate smart energy source for the town. I did talk to Kellen. I know that we're reviewing some of the town-owned properties. For example, possibly the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center, the Millwood Water Treatment Plant, some of the other town-owned buildings possibly for installation of these solar panels. I don't know if Jill or Lori or Ivy have any updates that they would like to share on this, any discussions maybe with the SAB.
Yeah.
Not
One
today.
thing is, at some point, we need to follow up on that submission that we made to New York Power Authority, Jill. Remember we sent them
Right.
just, they were going to potentially do an audit of any smaller properties that could be consolidated into sort of a single project. It'd just be interesting, you know, if they
Right.
rejected all of ours, it'd just be nice for them to follow up and let us know.
No, it's true. We had given them a laundry list of possible locations. They had rejected each one of them individually as not being sufficient, but the idea was is that if they could take and consolidate a number of individual small properties, that it may be a viable project. And yeah, I haven't heard anything back from them.
You know, and I think the school district did the same potentially, so it might be worth following up with. I don't know, John Chow, but he's still there, or whomever.
It's your personal, yeah. So,
Okay, the next priority has to do with creating an overlay district for the West End. I know as part of that in January, the town entered into the Indian Brook and Croton Gorge I'm a watershed overlay zone, and in March, the town reestablished the Millwood West End Advisory Board.
So I see your note here, Ivy. I didn't think that this was part of the charter of that advisory board. I thought that this was an engineering project.
Yeah, I think they're separate, although, you know, obviously the Millwood West End Advisory Board would have an interest in the movement, you know, the progress made on that. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
the Venn diagram is closely aligned, although.
Sure.
I don't have a further update on the watershed overlay zone, not at this point. Joe, I don't know if you have any.
No, I've heard nothing on it.
Okay, the next priority, airport noise. You know, earlier this year, the town board appointed Rob Fleischer and Dick Goldsmith to the committee. I know that currently under consideration is a change to the flight path that would lessen the impact over the town. And again, I'm not sure, Ivy, if you have a further update after that. I know that Rob Fleischer presented to the board a couple months ago, and that was the last I recall on that.
Yeah, I had spoken to the county about this last week. They were saying for this to actually be viable, that we needed to have some joint meetings with Newcastle and the surrounding municipalities that would be impacted by the change in flight plan, including the FAA liaison, to essentially have a chance of getting that flight path change enacted. There needed to be some consensus among the impacted municipalities. So, you know, there's an opportunity for Newcastle, I think, to take the lead, to start setting up those discussions. That seems like that is a possibility.
So I've actually heard the exact opposite, because nobody wants the airport noise over their municipalities. So really, I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to need to advocate for ourselves. I don't know that it's going to actually work in collaboration with those other municipalities, but we can certainly try. I think a lot of it's going to be getting the you know, Board of Legislators involved, and I've been speaking with Vedad about it, and you know, hopefully we can get this moving. But a lot of it is also going to be dealing with you know, the FAA and trying to get them to move it. And luckily, we're talking about it at almost every, airport meeting, and it's moving along as quickly as we can get it done.
Right, but the FAA won't consider it without some preliminary engagement from the impacted municipalities. That's my point.
Yes.
Yeah, the next priority was fast tracking housing options for elderly family members and research options. And Lori, I'll let you comment. I know we traded emails late last week, and I know you answered me, and I had already submitted my report to the board if you want to.
Yeah, that's okay. So Sabrina and I had discussed this. She felt that there were already kind of informal processes in place to fast track applications before the planning board for these kinds of needs, whether it was modification of a home to enable a disabled family member or to house an elderly family member, that was already in place. There may still be room for improvement, and so we're still looking into it.
Okay, the next topic, I don't have an update, and I spoke with Jill as far as creating an emergency response playbook, kind of involving NCCMC, police, fire, emergency services. So I'm not really sure on that one, Ivy. Do you have any update? Have we reached out to any of those people? Do you know?
I don't have an update. I will get this in some kind of shape before I leave the board, so that we at least have a framework to work off of, to be able to build it out. But it's really the idea is kind of taking a look through recent events and sort of taking a look at what the kind of lessons learned and best practices were, and then kind of trying to put together basically something that I can then hand off to Jeremy, and Jeremy can then hand off to the next supervisor, to really be able to lead the community through these kinds of challenges, so that we're not recreating the wheel each time something happens.
Okay, thank you. The next category is to enhance recreation and improve community spirit. Quite a bit going on here. The first priority was to partner with and support the Rec Commission to create a new rec master plan. Spoke with Kellen regarding this. Currently, we're in the data collection phase of the project. We are currently working with PACE to develop an online survey. Kellen tells me that is close to being completed, and they'll put that up online. They anticipate that'll be a rather lengthy survey. They do intend to distribute a shorter survey at each of the individual parks, kind of to leave it, I don't know if in a little box that people can grab a survey and take it home and return it. Currently, they have trail counters in place on each trail, and at Gedney Park, they have a vehicle counter deployed. Best hope, I guess, the best estimate right now is that the town hopes to complete this in the fourth quarter of the year. The next one is the enhancement of Millwood Park. That's come along very well. In fact, I guess we're having the ribbon cutting. Is it June 11th at 7:30? Sorry, 7:45 was it? I know we talked about that today. Forget the time exactly. So the Millwood Park improvements have been completed. They include new ball field lighting and parking lot and pathway lights. Renovation to the outfield of the baseball field was completed last fall. And with the help of Little League, it's anticipated that the renovation on the infield will be complete this fall. Resurfacing of the tennis courts is currently on hold. When they went to look at that, some of the trees that were close to the tennis courts, the roots had kind of come through. So they need to solve that problem before they resurface the court, or we're going to repeat the same problem. The next priority is to update the town's open space management plan. Spoke with Dennis on this, our environmental coordinator. He's kind of comparing this to working with the Parks and Rec Master Plan to identify open spaces. The town has actually applied for a grant from the DEC to complete a natural resources inventory, and he expects the results from that grant application in the fall, in the late third quarter, early fourth quarter of the year. The next priority was the chap line. And I think everybody remembers a couple weeks ago, B&L, they've completed the design phase of the chap line, and they made a presentation to the town board. I thought it was an excellent presentation. B&L did a great job on that. Right now, the town has engaged Barton & LaJudas to assist us in applying for grants to help subsidize the project. It's a pretty costly project, and the town would definitely need some help paying for that. Barton & LaJudas think there is money out there right now, and they're going to help us find that. So we're waiting for the results of all these grant applications to determine if the project will be economically feasible.
One thing we need to do on that, guys, because I've been meeting with a lot of the residents from Lawrence Farm South and Chestnut Oaks, is they're still not so happy with the plan. So we really need to work with them and make sure we can come to a kind of collaborative agreement with how it can kind of work for everybody. Just putting that out there.
Well, I think we're trying to minimize the exposure, and I know that Jill has spoken with some of the residents.
Yeah.
Discussed the land swaps and obviously moving behind not the fence, but the wall by Chestnut Oak. So we'll continue that, and we also have that board or that group that be advising us as well.
Yeah,
So
but we have to look at that. I think the Lawrence Farm South resident who was on that group just moved or is in the process of moving. So we need to make sure we get someone else on that board.
Okay. Yeah. We a lot of history there. Sure. We'll continue to work with them. It's absolutely not a problem. We're just at a point where we just need to know whether or not the project is even going to go forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the next priority is the chap pack. So right now, the town is currently completing work in the lobby of the chat pack, including a new ticket counter and snack bar. We're working right now also with NCCMC to help upgrade the interactive broadcasting and recording capabilities there. And that would help us to better host some of these town meetings. And not sure how much longer we'll be doing Zoom meetings, but if those continue, hopefully we'll have the capability there to broadcast the Zoom meetings there. Okay, next one is exploring walking paths in a downtown near rec fields, wild space expansion. So we've asked Barton & LaJudas to give us kind of a rough estimate of what the cost would be in order to determine what our next steps are. And Jill, I think you mentioned, I don't think we've received that from them yet. I know we've asked Barton.
No, actually, Bob Searley told me that he's just going to take Barton & LaJudas' estimates and just give us a rough back of the envelope based upon what's there. We'll see what the costs are for it. And then he was concerned that it requires DEC permitting. It's also in a floodplain, and he just wasn't sure what we would have to do to get approval from the DEC for the raised boardwalk there. So he's going to take the first stab at it. So we should be getting that in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the help. Next, discover Chappaqua to collaborate with the Rec Commission to develop the 2021 calendar of events. Lauren, not to put you on the spot, but maybe you want to comment. I understand that one of the events is coming up, I think, this weekend, Supper on Center Street, and I think that was a collaboration with you and the Rec Department. So I don't know if you have any other events you might want to talk about.
Sure. Well, first off, I hope the folks who are listening and on the call tonight will join us this Saturday from 5 to 8 p.m. There will be live music, wine and beer vended by Quaker Hill Tavern. The Newcastle Historical Society will also open their doors. So for diners who prefer to, dine on the beautiful property of Horace Greeley's home, you can dine on the porch or bring your picnic blankets and sit on their lawn. There will be picnic tables lined up along Center Street where we will close the street. And I have to really, 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 really thank Ike Huzio, our superintendent of the rec department, because he was just so awesome to work with, as well as Chief Carroll, Tom DePole, and Brendan also from the rec department. They all have just been so awesome, just walking through, making sure that this event will be super safe and just fun for the community. And I just really hope that folks come out this Saturday, because I think it'll be a great event. And for the rest of the 2021 calendar, I have to give a lot of credit to the rec department as well. They have a robust drive-in movie calendar, as well as July summer concerts are happening this year. As far as Community Day, that's a Rotary Day, Rotary Club event, and I believe that they're hosting that September 18th. And as many folks on this call know, the Chappaqua Children's Folk Festival will be happening, and the Ragamuffin Parade, we're hopeful, will happen this year as well. So again, I really feel like this is just such a great shift for us and our community, and I'm really looking forward to a fantastic year and to finally seeing people and having great conversation and just meeting people in person. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Great job, Lauren.
I think it's so awesome. Lauren, I remember when you were running for office and you used to talk about all the kinds of events you wanted to bring to the community. And I think it's just really cool that you're like seeing that through, and that we're getting to reap the rewards of having you on the town board. This is really going to be a fun event, and I'm super excited about it.
Thank you, guys. And I hope to see you all there.
For sure.
The next category of priorities concerns COVID-19 pandemic. Just kind of going through these all together. Communications about the COVID-19 pandemic, including the weekly county emergency response calls. I know that Ivy's been on those routinely throughout the pandemic. I know Jill's been on them. I've been on quite a few of those. I know that Ivy comes back and brings that information back. I see it in the newsletters with all the COVID information. So I think we've been communicating with the community all throughout the pandemic. Also to promote the health and safety of the Newcastle residents during the pandemic. Again, the weekly newsletters provide a lot of information. The rec department did a great job through this whole process, especially early on when the vaccine appointments were kind of difficult to get. I don't know if other people had that, but I kind of went on. It was like buying concert tickets. Like I was hitting refresh probably literally 200 times, and I finally got my vaccine, and then I wasn't quick enough. And then, I was trying to think, do I want it at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock? And then it was gone. And so I know the rec department, assisted seniors in town, and that was great. And also the town management worked with the county officials to get vaccine appointments for all the staff members, which was great. For all our kind of front and public facing staff members, our DPW, our police, and even the town hall staff, to be able to get vaccinated and be able to start increasing the density at work when we did was great. And the last category here is assisting local businesses, and what have we done? I'll mention a couple, and Ivy, if you want to, or Lauren, mention any others that I might have missed. But the town has offered the facade grant. I don't think we've had any takers on that yet, but that is still open and available to our businesses. And I know the town has extended the outdoor dining provisions to kind of, to help people feel comfortable. I know everybody's dying to get back out and eat at restaurants, but I know there's a lot of people that still don't want to eat inside. So I think that's helpful to be able to still eat outside. So Ivy or Lauren, I don't know if either of you have any other comments, anything you want to add. Okay, thanks. And the last category of priorities was the race and equity. The board wants to partner with the CRE to implement the action plan. I know just recently, I think it was in the last couple of weeks, the town authorized the establishment of the CRE as a permanent committee. I saw the call go out in the newsletter, I think it was last week, looking for members. And so I think that's where we are to try to form a permanent committee and I know they had I think a couple hundred pages of recommendations. They did quite a lot of work at the end, well, the middle through the end of last year. And I think that the permanent committee will be tasked with kind of moving that forward. Last was to finalize the Newcastle Police Reform and Reinvention Committee recommendations. So the town adopted those recommendations in March, and I think we're working on implementing some of that right now. So that's the update that I have with the priority task for the town board for 2021. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments, or even wants, if there are other priorities that aren't on here that anybody has questions on.
Thought you did a good job hitting the important pieces.
Yep. Great job, Rob.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Rob. That was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Okay, no more comments for Rob. We'll let him catch his breath for a little bit, and we'll move on to the Kimley Horn change order. So we went back to Kimley Horn with some topics that were outside of the original scope of our form-based code and DGIS. We have gotten a change order from them that limits them to just a couple of items. We are looking at deliverables of the preliminary final DGIS, I'm sorry, preliminary final GEIS on July 8th, with an additional fee of $81,000, and then the preliminary finding statement 3 weeks after the FGEIS circulation of $14,000. And so there'll be a resolution for that approval this evening. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a quick comment. Just explain, and I know Ed's here. So, you know, again, I do flat fees in my law practice all the time. And if something takes longer than anticipated or is more complex than anticipated, I eat that cost because that was a contract that I entered into. So to me, we have a contract, like a scope of agreement with them. And I don't remember, I feel like it's section 5C of that said that they will respond to comments that to produce a final FGIS. Mm-hmm. And they're charging us like $75,000 to do that as part of the contract fee. So I feel like they're saying there are too many things to respond to, but maybe if they did a better job the first time, they wouldn't have so many things to respond to. To me, they're kind of extorting us for that. And are they really do they really as a company want to say, well, we didn't do such a good job, so now there were too many things we had to answer to and re-look into, so we decided we were going to basically charge them more and not honor our contract. I just can't imagine that looks good for them from a business perspective to have that out there. So I this troubles me because I, as a business person, would not do this. And I know we negotiated it down, but it should be zero.
Right. So
give it an opportunity.
I can comment on some of that. So Lisa, everything that you just said was brought back to Kimley Horn. It was a very frank and sometimes difficult conversation with them. As you said, the number got negotiated down substantially from where they wanted it to be. Your read of the contract is correct, and that is exactly what we hit them over the head with time and time again. I think I can say that now because they're probably not listening. The other thing I feel a little bit more comfortable saying is the contract also contains a termination for convenience provision where either side could terminate on 30 days notice for any reason. So that created the concern that if we couldn't come to some kind of a compromise, they would walk. And we'd have to start over again with an RFP process and bring in a new consultant and bring them up to speed. And that, frankly, wasn't a very attractive option, I think, for most of the people on the town board. So the effort was really focused on trying to get to that compromise. And Jeremy was involved in some of that. I think he'll tell you that it was a very difficult discussion with them. But ultimately, I think where we landed, we were not entirely happy. They were not entirely happy. It's an outcome, though, that allows the process to go forward.
But does it? I mean, it does, but I feel like it's just a game of chicken. Did they really want that PR to say they walked away because they did such a bad job the first time that they had to respond to too many questions?
I don't really want to relitigate it in an open session, but I will tell you that all of those points were made repeatedly, and this is where it has ended.
So you needed a woman in that room.
No, I don't think yeah. Not that had anything to do with anything. I was on the most recent call, and to your point, Lisa, I made it overwhelmingly clear that the last thing they want to do, and I repeatedly said within the four corners of the law, so they don't believe that I'm threatening them. But the last thing they wanted to do was do wrong by Newcastle and not do their job. And if we had to go out an RFP or do something like that, the consequences would be grave, again, within the four corners of the law. And the last thing, I use that term repeatedly, they wanted to do is stick it to anybody, because if they are the organization that holds itself out as the ones who are high up on the food chain in terms of doing these projects, if they mess with Newcastle and don't do it right, whomever's coming down the pike is going to see the same thing. We've had this issue repeatedly. And one of the things that unfortunately sucks for anyone who's not aware is, like we did with the infrastructure project, because the ELQ didn't want to bring in the folks from Cobleskill to finish the sidewalks as they were being ripped up. They have you in a tough situation because unfortunately, you as a non-private business owner can't just say, fine, I'm going to give this to another person. We would have to RFP and then have to start that process over, and it goes on for a long time. So that's why we were stuck in a bad place, even with ELQ, and that's why municipalities routinely have this issue that arise when these things come up. But I was very aggressive and assertive with them, and Ed can attest to that, and that it wasn't acceptable what they were asking for, and there would be consequences, and significant ones, and they would lose. But we need to move the project forward. We believe in it. I know you have a different opinion. But to spend more money just to chase that, to put us back where we were before in a month and a half from now, would have been asinine, because and then litigate it down the road, it would have been just not a practical solution.
I don't know. I would have been more willing to play hardball with them to abide by the actual contract that they signed, but.
Same way you agreed all collectively. We dealt with ELQ. Sometimes you unfortunately have to take a pill that you got to swallow you don't want. And the recourse that we have is to sue them, and we could sue other from bad actors. That might be an overstatement, but we have to understand, again, it's not so easy. We're not a private business where we say, oh, we don't like that contractor, we're just bringing in a new one. I wish it was that way. I think we all wish it was that way, but that's not the reality of the world in public government.
Well, yeah, but it's the way contract law works.
Right. So we couldn't turn
And
around for everybody.
They would 100% lose.
Right. And then we would waste a year and a half to litigate it. I know that may meet certain ends.
No, they would back down before then. They don't want that bad PR.
No,
There's no way.
And we've had this battle with ELQ. You and I have to go back and forth on it. I think it's a reality. Municipalities have to deal with it. It's unfortunate. And I agree with you, out of line. And we push back and we push back significantly, and we are where we are. Nothing is perfect. I explained that we are also fiduciaries, and any dollar that we go above and beyond is a dollar too much. But the consequences, practically speaking, were significant for us to restart this and commence litigation and pay Keen and Bean and deal with them, or for that matter, go out and RFP to somebody else. So that's where we were.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear, this has nothing to do with the form-based code for me. It has to do with contract law and being a fiduciary of our taxpayers' money and not wanting to spend a dime extra than we're required to. That's what it has to do with, nothing.
I agree, but I think if we're going to stick with that argument, we had this issue, and Ed, did we not have this issue with other contractors that come before the town that we've had a give and take? I mean, it's an unfortunate reality. So this is not unique to, you're right, it's not unique to the form-based code, but we as a town board have moved forward with other projects and we're in similar situations.
I think it also is that we're not only talking about giving them more money to finish the work. I think if that were the only reason that we were doing this change order, that I would agree with you, Lisa, we wouldn't be moving forward with it. But I think that there are things that they have to address, comments that they have to address that were unforeseen and that are outside of what the original scope of the project was, as documented in that change order. So yeah, I think it's important to note that it's not simply a matter of gifting more money to finish the job. It's also the fact that the scopes and the scope and the terms under which they're working have shifted. And you know, there's certainly the sort of legal perspective. There's also the kind of real world perspective as to, you know, how do you take a $500,000 project like this, working with a consulting shop like Kimley Horn, and see it through to completion. And I don't think that a change order like this is outside of what is normal and what we see in these kinds of projects every day. So it's unfortunate and it's it's a tough one to swallow for all of us, I think. But I support it, and you know, having been in the original conversations, kind of dating back, you know, several weeks, if not months now. You know, I just want to say, you know, I think Ed did just an outstanding job on behalf of Newcastle, and did play hardball. I heard him raise his voice and in a way that I had not heard before. And I think he did a fabulous job for us. So, you know, am I thrilled to pay more money? No, I'm not thrilled to pay more money, but it's an outcome that I feel like I can live with and that is reasonable. And I do want to see this project through to completion.
Ed, was there an arbitration provision? Sorry, was there an arbitration provision in the contract? I can't remember.
There was. I'd have to dig it out to. So there was a dispute resolution proceeding. Yeah, I think it was AAA.
But before we even get to that point, what you just mentioned before, Ivy, and Ed can attest to this, what I think they tried to do at some point was, because we had gone, there was more that was needed beyond the original scope. Because again, as Ivy pointed out, I'm glad she did, because I wasn't thinking along those lines. There's additional work that needed to be done. What they wanted to try to do was add more dollars to that additional work to compensate them for maybe what they didn't anticipate from the original agreement. And to that end, that's where we were hammering on them. And to be very clear, as Ivy said, she haven't heard Ed's voice be raised. I said to them, you know, Ivy is a very nice, kind, generous person who's smart and on top of it, and has been around the block many times with these types of things in her previous life before coming to the town board. But I'm less nice, less kind, more confrontational, and it's not going to happen. So, and it needs to be clear before anyone runs out of here and says, oh, we just approved something to give them more money. That is absolutely not the case, because it was beyond the scope. And they, in fact, wanted significantly more money and tried to use that as a mechanism to compensate for their older work that they thought was too much. But what we did is we brought that number down exponentially, but significantly.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is something that we've had repeatedly. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation and people listen to it. This has come up during your tenure and my tenure on multiple other occasions. This is by no means the first and by no means the largest.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the scope in the contract, when I read it, just said they will respond. It didn't say to 5 things, 10 things. It just said will respond to all questions. But it's okay.
Right.
We can agree to disagree.
Right. And it said in the LQ that they're going to put down the darn concrete sidewalks. This isn't crazy math here. People unfortunately don't always do what they're supposed to do, and they're held accountable at times. Sometimes they're not. And at the same time, when there's issues that go beyond those scope, sometimes you have to come back to the table and have new conversations because it's beyond the scope. And there are issues that are beyond the scope, but we're going back and forth. So.
Okay. The next thing on our agenda is the Dell Avenue Solar Project. It's in Yorktown. And the Yorktown Town Board has approached us, letting us know of their intention to be lead agency. Sabrina has written a memo to the board just briefly about the project. We are not an involved agency, we're an interested agency. And as such, we have the right to take and express our concerns to Yorktown, which we will be doing on the project. We don't necessarily have standing to take and object to their position as lead agency. We do have concerns as the neighboring municipality, and we will be expressing them to them in writing so that, as you know from the secret process, those comments need to be addressed. They include, but they're not limited to, stormwater and also fire suppression, because evidently this type of solar project and the storage requires a different type of fire suppression that we don't have. So that implicates things like mutual aid, where fire companies from one municipality take and assist another municipality in, fighting larger fires. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation with Yorktown that they're going to have to address, and we'll hear more about it as the project goes on. But just wanted to bring it to the board's attention, and we thought it was important enough to put it on the agenda so that everybody's aware of it.
Sorry, so I read the memo that was in the packet for tonight, and I didn't get from reading that memo from Sabrina that there were like kind of serious concerns here. And the way that I'm hearing you talk about it right now, it feels like maybe they are serious concerns. So I just
she
want
does
to
talk
make
about
sure.
the fire and safety protocols regarding the tier 2 battery energy storage. I mean, that's actually, a big deal.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure we're keeping open lines of communication and feeling collaborative and so on with the town of Yorktown.
No, this is it's a new technology when it comes to battery storage, and as an alternate form of energy, and it presents some aspects that we've never addressed before. So we're very interested to see how these accommodations are going to be made, and how our concerns are going to be addressed, because as with mutual aid, just because it's in a neighboring town and not our town doesn't mean that we don't have to deal with it as well. So we're going to be very interested to learn all about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, because I know it has come up for us before, and we've been kind of waiting to discuss it. So it would be great to be able to take some lessons learned from Yorktown's experience here and potentially apply it.
And build upon it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's great.
The next thing on the agenda is authorization to set a public hearing for the proposed local law to extend by 6 months the moratorium. Drew, do you want to talk us through this?
Sure. So the moratorium expires on June 22nd. I think exactly a month ago or so, the town board adopted a resolution to narrow the scope of the moratorium, but that didn't actually affect when it expires. So we have prepared a local law to extend it, but the local law is very clear that you are only extending the moratorium applied for the parcels on the North Greeley corridor. So that's where the moratorium is going to be extended, just for those parcels. And it is 6 months, and the goal is to make this the last extension. And it does have to be referred to the planning board and to the county Department of Planning.
I feel like we've been saying that line about this is the last time we're going to extend it since.
Well,
I think I'm optimistic that we can really get it done this time. And I know the county has put more pressure on the town. They wanted the last one to be the last one. But now we've narrowed the scope. We've made significant steps. So I think, I'm optimistic things can get done. And so,
I'm making bad jokes. I'm giving you a
yeah,
hard.
it's okay.
It's all good.
Okay. Any other questions for Drew? Okay. And the next thing is just administrative items. So we've got adoption of minutes from May 25th, 2021. There was a revised set of minutes, I believe, that came through. There was, right? Thank you, Lauren. We're going to table the tent rental. We still don't have the proposal from them. They promised us it's coming, but haven't gotten it yet. The next is the authorization to approve the solid waste contract extension for town-owned buildings. We have one more extension on that. The next is an authorization to solicit proposals for sludge removal from the Millwood Water Treatment Plant. And last but not least, it's the authorization to reallocate NYSERDA CEC grant funding to the Millwood Park Lighting Improvement Capital Project. We received some additional funds from our LED and solar bus project we had left over, and so we'd like to apply it to the Millwood Rec Field project. And then we've got resolutions. If anybody's ready for those.
I think Lori was going to start with the Pride resolution.
Okay.
Are we going to move into a board meeting for that, or?
No, you can do it in work session.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Okay. So I move to adopt the following resolution, whereas the town of Newcastle, New York cherishes the value and dignity of each person who appreciates the importance of equality and freedom. And whereas all are welcome in the town of Newcastle to live, work, play, and every family in any shape deserves a place to call home where they are safe, happy, and supported by friends and neighbors. And whereas the town denounces prejudice and unfair discrimination based on age, gender identity, gender expression, race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical attributes as an affront to our fundamental principles. And whereas Pride Month began in June of 1969 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City after LGBTQ+ and allied friends rose up and fought against constant police harassment and discriminatory laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas LGBTQ+ people have fought for equal treatment, dignity, and respect, and have achieved significant milestones in ensuring that future generations of LGBTQ people will enjoy a more equal and just society. And whereas LGBTQ+ people still face disparities in employment, healthcare, education, housing, and many other areas central to the pursuit of happiness in the United States. And whereas the town of Newcastle appreciates the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus community, which strengthen our social welfare. And whereas it is imperative that young people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. And whereas despite being marginalized, LGBTQ people continue to celebrate authenticity, acceptance, and love. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of this town declare the month of June 2021 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month in the town of Newcastle and urge residents to recognize the contributions made by members of the LGBTQ+ community and to actively promote the principles of equality, liberty, and justice.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, shall I keep going?
Go ahead.
Okay. I move to adopt the following resolution, whereas adoption of the proposed local law as a type 2 action pursuant to New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, and therefore no further environmental review is required. Now, therefore be it resolved, the town board of Newcastle, of the town of Newcastle hereby set a public hearing to consider the proposed local law to extend for 6 months the moratorium imposed by local law 13 of 2018 for certain properties along the North Greeley Avenue business corridor within the BR retail business and BRP retail business and parking districts in the Chappaqua Hamlet in the town of Newcastle on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 at 7 p.m. via video conferencing according to Governor Cuomo's executive orders or in person if permitted. Be it further resolved that the town board hereby refers to the local law to the Westchester County Planning Board and the town of Newcastle Planning Board for report and recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I move to approve amendment number 4 to the agreement between Kimley Horn Engineering and Landscape Architecture of New York, PC, and the town of Newcastle dated May 25th, 2021, for the additional services set forth in attachment A for the total fee of $95,000 with any additional meetings provided as requested at the per meeting rate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote no for the reasons discussed in the meeting.
And then we
Lisa,
have
do you,
the,
yeah, Lisa, do you have the gun violence?
Yep, I have it. Okay, this proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the town of Newcastle, to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence, and to declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence. Whereas every day 100 Americans are killed by gun violence, and on average there are nearly 13,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed with guns than people in other high-income countries, and whereas protecting public safety in the communities we serve is our highest responsibility, and whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories, and whereas in January 2013, Hadia Pendleton, a teenager who marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade and was tragically shot and killed just weeks later, should now be celebrating her 22nd birthday. And whereas to help honor Hadia and the 100 Americans whose lives are cut short and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 4th, 2021, the first Friday in June as is it the 5th? I'm thinking it's the 7th, National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadia's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 4th, the first Friday in June in 2021, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 4th, 2021, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we declare the first Friday in June, June 4th, 2021, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 okay,
Jill, did we hit all our marks?
we hit all our marks. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. If folks want to join us at Town Hall on Saturday at 10 a.m., we'll be raising Pride flag at Town Hall. So please come be a part of it with us.
That's great. I got to change t-shirts before then.
All right, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.